Captains of Industry, brought to you by Airtel.
ABB is the leading manufacturer and supplier of automation technologies that are used in sectors such as mining, energy, electricity, water and transport. They're also a critical supplier in the industrial mix in general, and it's something that's seen that should make local economies work better. Businesses look to ABB for efficiencies and modernization, and increasingly they're being looked at to bridge the gap of unemployment and underdevelopment. Carlos Pone is the CEO of ABB. He's our captain of industry tonight. In South Africa, we're told, Carlos, that your orders increased by 8.8% in year 2010. But in general, most suppliers have suffered after the World Cup because of delays in tender processes, because of payment delays, those kinds of things. Do you find this a challenging environment to operate in at the moment?
I think that we have been hit by the global recession. And we know that South Africa is always 6 to 9 months behind. And probably that gap has been increased probably to a year or so due to the World Cup. So I think that when it comes to the mining sector, has been hugely affected. When it comes to the steel market, so a lot of these markets have been hit internationally. It's not nothing to do with South Africa alone. You know, when it comes to tender processes and with payments, we don't have many problems. We deal with large companies, we deal with Eskom, we deal with large municipalities. So we haven't found that payments is really a problem. You know, if we do our homework and we invoice, we normally get paid. We normally get paid in time. So probably that would be onto other industries, but certainly not in our industry.
There's a reason I'm asking this, is that generally there's a feeling that even though you're starting to see the private sector galvanized in Africa, it's still very much a political animal doing business in Africa. You've got to make sure you've got the right partners, politically connected partners, and you've got to work within the system. Generally, even outside of South Africa, is it a heavily bureaucratic, difficult environment? You know,
some countries are getting a lot easier to do business with, and some countries are more difficult. You know, I think we have to compare countries and see where some of that stigmatism really comes from, because it's not the whole of Africa that is difficult to do business with. There are countries easy. I mean, in South Africa it's easy to do business with them, and when you look at the way we do business in Africa, it's certainly not different than the way we do business in India or in South America or in other parts of the world. I think the developing world does have its challenges, and Africa is the same as the rest of the developing world. And I think that if we look at some of the countries that have learned to get investment, to get employment, then you see that it's becoming easier and easier and easier to do business with those countries.
And what about the industrial clients? You're saying that some sectors were harder hit by the recession than others. I know that you've also just recently made an acquisition of Coil Mech Mine Hoist Services, and so very much expanding your footprint within that sector of the economy, seen as the lifeblood of the economy. But it's also a sector that suffered huge knocks and volatility with commodity prices fluctuating, etc. Do you think that was a clever thing to do?
Yeah, you know, when you take decisions, you don't just take decisions for the next 6 months or the next year or the next 2 years. You know, the decisions are taken for the long term. And if you look at Coil Mech and what we did with Coil Mech, is not just also to the South African mining industry, is for exports into Africa, for exports into Canada, for exports into the United States, to China. So you know, it's a technology that ABB needed, that ABB in some cases use other subcontractors in other parts of the world. So it's a good opportunity for ABB to show that in Africa we can have technology that can be exported to other parts of the world.
I'm glad you're talking about this, because it points us to issues around skills transfer, technological transfer, the things that are really going to support industrialization in Africa and help us catch up. Your views on something like the New Growth Plan, for instance, or the New Growth Path, where there's an emphasis on labor-intensive industries, but a specific emphasis on manufacturing being the nucleus of growth going forward. Some people say it's impossible. We can never compete against the Asians. Yes, we need the technological transfer, etc., but we really need to be channeling our energies differently.
I think we need to have a mix. To concentrate just in labor-intensive manufacturing is probably not the only way. You know, we need to transfer skills into South Africa. We need to have new technologies in South Africa. And let me tell you, if we think we're gonna compete with the Chinese or with Indian companies, and in Africa itself, if we think we're gonna compete labor-wise with the Egyptians, we are completely wrong. What we need is to make sure that we have got good universities, that we have got good colleges, that we have got good technical colleges, that we bring new technologies into South Africa. And as I normally say, and people know, when I go overseas and I try and discuss and convince my principals to put more and more money into South Africa, is at the top of the knowledge pyramid. And we need to train more people. We need to make sure that when people get out of universities, they have a job. And the problem sometimes is people get out of universities and they don't have a job. So we need to combine. I'm not saying this is the only way. I'm saying that we need to make sure that we get the right mix. But to go only onto labor intensive, it's maybe not 100%.
People get out of university and they don't get a job because there are no jobs, or because the universities are not producing people who are relevant to the economy?
Well, it all depends. I mean, I think that if you look at the peak of our industry, 2006, 7 and 8, we couldn't find engineers fast enough. We still can't find engineers fast enough. This is not a problem with South Africa. This is a global problem. You know, if you go to Germany in 2007, 2008, in Germany you couldn't find engineers fast enough. So I think when it comes to engineers, and on the other hand, you don't need everybody with a degree. You need people to go into the technicons. You need people to go into the technical colleges. You need electricians. You need wiremen. You need people that can design a transformer. So you know, the technology is not just the top guys. The technology starts also at the bottom.
When people say to you, "Ooh, South Africa, the labor is too politicized. They're always striking, always negotiating most unreasonable terms with business," what do you say?
Well, try go to Greece. Try go to Portugal today, where all railways employees are on strike. So I think that what we have to make sure is that there is the right dialogue. There is the right dialogue between industry. There is the right dialogue with government. There is the right dialogue with the unions. What we can't have is people asking for better wages and better wages and better wages without looking at productivity. There is nothing wrong with better wages. There is nothing wrong with people having a good house, a good TV, and a good car. Absolutely nothing. What we must make sure is that we combine that with productivity. If you go to Germany, productivity is very high, and people get very good salaries. So that is the combination we need to make sure that we come up with, and that combination can only be with knowledge. With no knowledge, then we'll be back to basic to the basic question of low-cost countries and non-low-cost countries.
You've been in South Africa for many, many years. In your eyes, how has this country changed?
You know, I came here from Mozambique, where I stayed 10 years after the revolution. So you know, when we came here, I mean, and everyone that came here could see that South Africa needed huge transformation. And that transformation is taking place. And what it's like a miracle is that this transformation has been really without violence. This transformation has been based on dialogue. And government after government after government has always come with a dialogue and development on the top of their agenda. So there has been a huge transformation in this country. Probably it needs to have more transformation. But you know, if you go to Europe, you know, some of these countries are 1,000 years old. So we can't compare ourselves with countries that are 1,000 years old and a country that is really only born or reborn, let's call it, in 1994.
I mean, many people obviously know the South African story, the miracle post-apartheid, but you were raised and brought up in Mozambique, and that's also another country that's undergone a huge transformation, I'd have to say as well. From when I was growing up, it was images of civil war, Frelimo, Renamo, and now we're talking about it being one of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world. Tell us your experiences of Mozambique.
Look, you know, this the question of the civil war is something of the past, which was passed in you know, from 1992. But you go for a country that has been in a constant civil war for really since 1968, 1969. So it was the war against the Portuguese for independence, and then it was a war really created by regimes that were bordering Mozambique in those times. So I mean, when I came to South Africa, we almost couldn't get out of Maputo. So bad it was, and I think we have, you know, when I say we, because I was born there and I lived in there for close to 30 years. So I think we have surpassed those problems, also based on dialogue, and obviously what happened in South Africa has helped Mozambique, because you know, there was no backing onto some of those rebel activities, and what you see a Mozambique where it's a lot easier to do business. You see a Mozambique where a lot of investments are coming in, and as I said, you know, I was there 2 weeks ago in Tete, in Moatize, almost on the middle of nowhere, where Vale is investing billions of dollars on a brand new coal mine where they are going to export, and we have seen not only in Mozambique but in the rest of Africa, those investments bring other investments. Right. They had to help build the railways, the harbors. Right. So we are really seeing Mozambique changing very, very quickly.
The values that you embrace, I mean, coming with a very strong Portuguese Mozambican heritage, working across the African continent, all those threads coming together in your life, how do they do so?
I think there are two things that come into our personal lives, and actually coming into ABB, that was very much part of the ABB way of thinking. One is ethics. You know, one must have very, very ethical standards. The second one is respect. You know, especially when you work across cultures, when you are in countries where you know, it's not just a question of race, it's a question of race, it's a question of culture, it's a question of religion. So respect for others is extremely, extremely important. And then is the determination to succeed. And that determination to succeed can only come from people in countries that have gone through a tough life.
Yeah. Thanks so much for your time. Carlos Pone, he's the CEO
Thank you
of
for having me.
ABB in Southern Africa, very much an African, born and raised in Mozambique, working in Southern Africa for the last decade or so, very committed to making ABB part of the industrial solution for Africa, particularly on energy issues, but saying that his heritage helps him be tolerant and work in a spectrum of diversity.